go to, I don't know, the Renaissance fair sort of thing atmosphere with a lot of little performances kind of taking place kind of out in the open. So what was a popular form of entertainment then was known as the Atellone farces. And Atellone refers to a particular area of Italy. But these were 20 or so minute plays, sketches, largely taking place in a family atmosphere with some stock characters. Those characters included a greedy miser, a doofus, hunchback servant, another servant that was fairly lazy, and a few things like that. So they were largely taking place in like a family construct where one little thing would happen within the family's construct, and the play would revolve around that. Sound familiar? Mm-hmm. It's King of Queens. It's Roseanne. It's Modern Family. It is a sitcom, basically, that was kind of invented during this time of the Roman era. It became very popular. Now these farces established a sort of tendency to have performances, or to have performances be enjoyed. And once Rome kind of spread and conquered Greece and saw how the festival Dionysus and other festivals worked, they kind of went, that's good. I like that. So we're going to create our own. The Ludi Romani was the kind of main one of about 5. And this one took place in September. Don't know why, but September. And it really started to feature full length, both comedies and tragedies, and what they called satyr plays again. But again, satyr plays kind of dissipated. As a means of performance for the entire public. It wasn't just citizens, it was children, women, slaves, everybody could go, and it was free. Every so often, there would be some kind of religious dedication in the Ludi Romani, but not necessarily, not anywhere near the length or near the sort of homage to the Greek gods as they had. So the Ludi Romani technically was in celebration of Jupiter, but it wasn't filled with as much ritual ceremony or ritual dedication. The venues were very much modeled after the Greek amphitheater and expanded on, and I'll get to that a little bit more in a moment. I don't know if I put this in here or not. Is this the next slide? Oh, yeah, there we go. Sorry, go back here. So one of the features of this, of what they considered to be, a dedication to the god, was to do something correctly. So that if the festival performance, and we're talking festival oftentimes would run for days, if the performance started out and included, we have a dance ceremony of some kind here, then we have a play, then maybe we'll have another sort of dance ceremony, something like that, and then another play, and oops! Somebody messed up and dropped the line. Well, that's considered a disrespect, a failure to the homage of the god. So they have to perform this correctly. But it's not just the show, it's the whole festival. So they would go back and start the whole festival from the beginning.
Oh yeah.
So I'm sort of at a loss to. Do people do that on purpose so the festival could go on longer? But there is evidence that, in case, and this is largely in the older sort of Roman Republic era, not so much the empire. But there is evidence that if something was messed up, or like a piece of scenery failed to revolve at the right time or something like that, if something broke, then it was considered an undermining of the whole festival, and they'd have to go and rededicate the whole thing again. So, pressure. So, anyways, that's a characteristic of that. Now, as far as the venues go, like Rome valued the spectacle of the structure a lot. So we still had things like the orchestra, where the chorus would be. We still had the seating that was kind of raked on the sides of the hillside, or built to be that way. But if you remember, the Scena was literally just a platform with a couple of little maybe like structures or something like that in the background. Well, the visually oriented Romans wanted to see a much greater spectacle of their theaters. So the scene, as they called the Scena Franz, which we'll get to in a second, they were often several stories high in these massive, impressive stone marble structures and things like that. So the audience was viewing much more than just what was happening on the stage. So some of the innovations that they brought to these venues included deeper stage, so there was more stage space, vellium, which was literally a shade that was pulled over the audience. So it was like a giant sheet that was built on pulleys to let the audience not have to sit in the baking Mediterranean summer sun. So it's a way of keeping the amphitheater feel, but not suffer, debilitating heat stroke. The vomitorium, which is a entrance beneath the audience.
Oh, like a vom.
That's what a vom is. It's a vomitorium. And that name comes from the fact that, well, Roman audiences were not necessarily the most graceful audiences. And particularly when we get into the later eras, the theater was known as a place for outrageous debauchery. And I'll explain more about that a little bit. But it was also known as a place where the audience would go to gorge themselves. So they'd be like pounding wine and grapes, wine and more grapes, same thing. Maybe throw some pork in there or something. And after a while, it gets to be a little too much. So I'm sitting in the audience, and so what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to go puke over the side into the pit where the entrance to the stage is. One of the wives' tales of where that name came from, because it was literally a spot that was designated for the audience to throw up, because it was going to happen. Pulpitum, kind of what it sounds like. What do you guys know as a pulpit? What do you know it as? What is it?
Where the pastor stands.
Okay. It's a little like raised platform off to the side, right? So they've built these extra levels on the stage now that they call the pulpitum. The Scena Franz, again, is a big, massive, sort of like, it's meant to look like the outdoor of a building, so it could look like outside of a street scene or the outside of a palace or something like that. They also used curtains for the first time, things that were so that entrances could be masked. And also, the Greeks used this somewhat, but they used them almost far more regularly. So the Greeks kind of started to use this towards the later part of their dramatic adventures, whereas this was introduced early on. But again, those are the sort of like rotating columns that have different painted panels on them to make it look like somebody's home, or in front of a street, or in front of a column, or out in the forest, things like that. Okay? So these were all things that were introduced and developed by the Romans. And here we get to see some of the examples. So this is, you can see the stenophrons. If you remember back to where we showed the Greek ones, they just literally had the stage and maybe one row and usually just a couple little huts on the stage, whereas now we've got this entire large, massive structure. And the later on in the empire of these winds, the more elaborate these got. As you can see, the seating bowl, we still have the orchestra here and so forth. Later in the empire, here's an actual one located in Orange, France. I actually heard one of these, it might have even been this one, but during the recent, military unsettling in Syria, one of these was hit pretty badly, some of the Roman ruins. All the way up to this guy. Now, during the later part of the empire, as the affection for arts starts to dwindle, their entertainment became spectacle. It became about, titillating your adrenaline as opposed to engaging yourself in any kind of intellectual understanding of things. So this seats something like 180,000 people. That's almost 1/5 of the entire population of Rome in the later part of the empire. And in here, of course, you would have chariot races. I understand the remake of Ben-Hur is coming out. The original one has a great representation of what this actually looks like. And so you